You once said, the most dangerous person is one who is articulate. What would you recommend to a one who wants to learn to speak in a more articulate manner?
Have you ever looked at a guy like Jordan Peterson and thought, man, I wish I could speak like that? How does he have so much command over his articulation? How does he use such beautiful language? How is he almost never at a loss of words, even when he's speaking on the biggest of stages? It's something I've thought about for a long time, and it's not just Jordan Peterson, but other great communicators like Steve Jobs, Shashi Tharoor, Obama. All of them have this innate ability to just weave words and articulate them in a manner that's just so beautiful to listen to. So we went very deep into Jordan Peterson, and in today's video, we're going to try and use some of his main techniques that can help us articulate just a little better. And after diving deep into many of his interviews, we realized that it's nothing innate or anything super talented about articulating a little better. And after going through multiple clips of Jordan Peterson and the advice he provides to articulate better, it's something that we don't need an innate talent for. In fact, if we can just theoretically understand them, practice them for application, and then receive feedback, there is a way for us to incorporate these principles. And the good news is, the way we've tried to structure this video is you can hopefully try and take these methods and start putting them into practice tomorrow. So let's get started. By the way, if you're new here, we release a ton of communications and public speaking content. If you're into that, hit subscribe. And if you're ready to take your communications journey to the next level, you can book a free communication consultation with us to see if we can help you out. Okay, so let's get into the 4 secrets that help you articulate a little more like Jordan Peterson. The first point is this. Most of us think to become better communicators, we need to read more books, which will help us expand our vocabulary. It will help us understand sentence structuring, so on and so forth. And it's true, reading can help, but what helps more than that is writing.
So if you want to make yourself articulate, which is a very good idea, then not only should you read, but you should write down what you think. And if you can do that a little bit every day, 15 minutes, maybe you could steal 15 minutes and do it every day. But if you do that for 10 years, you really straighten out your thinking.
And as he said, writing not only helps you to put your thoughts down so you can structure your ideas more effectively, but the more you do that and the more you understand how your thinking works, you'll eventually not need to write to speak spontaneously. Writing is a great way to also practice vocabulary expansion, because you can use words that you don't know into your writing, even if you don't share it with anybody else. Where should you write? There are 3 things you can do. First thing, you can just start journaling. Journaling is a great habit. It helps us be more self-aware and be on track with our goals, and it helps us practice our writing and hence our articulation. Second is to create content, whether it's a YouTube video or a blog or anything that helps you write something down. It will help you understand how to structure things in a manner that makes it comprehensible for somebody to understand and implement your ideas. And the third thing is similar to content creation, but it's one step above it, which is to teach something. When you're tasked with teaching something, you have to ensure that whatever lesson you're trying to communicate is structured properly. It has a premise, it has stories to help people remember your points, and it has strong takeaways so people know exactly what to do after you're done teaching them. All these things help you practice structure and articulation, and they're great ways to improve your overall communication. Number 2, now this is one of the most common points that a lot of communication coaches talk about, including Jordan Peterson, who's not a coach, but still. And that is the reduction of filler words.
You want to be inarticulate? You want to say and like and and pause and stumble and be unable to formulate a strategy, be unable to elucidate a vision, be unable to compel and convince other people, to entice them with your articulated vision of what might be. You want the opposite of that? Why would you want that? You would choose awkwardness over grace? It's preposterous. It's beyond foolish. And I cannot understand for the life of me why this case isn't made in a compelling manner, particularly to young men. And I know it's not being articulated to young men because they're dropping out of the educational realm in droves. And it's unbelievably sad.
So how do you exactly go about reducing filler words? The best way to do that is by first understanding how many fillers we use and which fillers do we use most often? To find this out, go to ChatGPT and ask, hey, give me one topic on blank industry, and just fill in whatever industry you're interested in, whether it's tech, finance, media, whatever. Once you get a topic, don't overthink it, just start speaking on it. But when you're speaking, number one, don't take too much time to think of what to say. Just spontaneously start speaking. It's okay if you blank out. And number two, keep your audio recorder on along with the stopwatch. You want to try and speak for a minimum of 2 minutes. Whatever comes to your mind, as long as it's somewhat relevant to that topic. After you're done, simply hear the audio recording, sit with a pen and paper, and note down how many fillers you've used. And after that, sit with a pen and paper and hear the audio recording and make notes of the number of fillers you're using and which fillers you're using. Is it like, once you're conscious about it, you need to tell other people who you talk to regularly that, hey, I'm trying to improve my communications. If I tend to use this word, whether, let's say that filler word is like. When I use like, and if it's not required in a sentence, just let me know about it. Now, if they point it out even once or twice to you, it'll make you a lot more aware about your use of filler words. You then want to start replacing that with a pause.
You can pause. It's a prayerful pause in some sense. When you're in a discussion with someone, you can ask yourself, they might present you with a question or a conundrum or a proposition, and instead of responding with what you know to be right, so to speak, you could just ask yourself, what do I actually think about that?
Now, many times when we are speaking on a point or trying to articulate an idea, we sometimes might be afraid of persuasion. Can we really influence the person to buy into our thought? And the best way to do that is if you have ethos or credibility on that subject, people are automatically more likely to be influenced by you, even if what you're saying might not be correct. Which is, of course, not a good thing, but it does help to use as a tool if you are saying something of value. Now, the problem is we can't always rely on our own credibility, because if you're speaking on a topic you're not very familiar with, you still want to put across a point, but you might not have too much standing, especially if you're talking to a senior or somebody who has a lot more experience than you. In that case, you want to do what Jordan Peterson does and use the credibility of other individuals. He does that a bunch of times in this interview. Watch how many people he references. Here are just 3 times of other people he references to add credibility to his own point.
But I know a former special services, special operations soldier, Jocko Willink. Some of you might know about Jocko. I learned this in part from reading Carl Rogers, who's a great clinician, and Rogers believed that the integration of language and action was a necessary precondition for operation as an effective clinician. So one of the reasons Joe Rogan is so successful, by the way, is that that's what Joe does. He just asks questions. He isn't trying to get something from his guests. He's not trying to become more famous. He doesn't need any more money. There's no instrumental utilization of language in his discourse. He's just a humble lunkhead, in the most profound sense, who would like to know more than he knows.
In fact, even this video is a call to ethos itself. We're trying to communicate certain points and lessons, but we're using Jordan Peterson as the benchmark. And hence, automatically, these points hold a little more value as opposed to me just speaking them out randomly. And the last point is to have a framework. This was one of my favorite points. I heard it in the Lex Friedman podcast when Jordan Peterson went on it. And this is what he talks about when it comes to having a framework.
So then you might say, well, how can you be careful with your words but carefree? And the answer is orient yourself properly, right? While in the conversation we're having, you have an orientation structure. You want to be prepared. You want to be attentive. Then you want to have an interesting conversation. And you want to have the kind of interesting conversation that other people want to listen to that will be good for them in some manner. Okay, so that's a pretty good frame. And then you kind of scour your heart and you think, is that really what you want? Are you after fame? Are you after notoriety? Are you after money? I'm not saying any of those things are necessarily bad, but they're not optimal, especially if you're not willing to admit them. So they can contaminate you. So you want to be decontaminated. So you have the right trip, let's say. And so you have to put yourself, that's a meditative practice. You have to put yourself in the right receptive position with the right goal in mind. Then you can, and I think you can get better and better at this, then you can trust what's going to happen.
Frameworks can be a little vague depending on the situation that you're in. The best way to tackle that is to be concrete on the objective you're trying to achieve. The way to find out your objective is to simply understand the reason you're talking to that particular individual or group of people.
I mean, I presume you have a reason for doing the podcast with me. What's the reason? So that's quite a frame for a discussion, right?
Yeah.
You had all sorts of reasons. And then you think, well, are you just letting the conversation go where it will? It's like, well, not exactly. You spent all this time. It's not like this came about by accident, this conversation. You spent all this time framing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of that provides the implicit substructure for the play in the conversation. And if you have that implicit, here's another way, this is very much worth knowing, is if you get the implicit structure of perception right, everything becomes a game. And not only that, a game you want to play. And maybe in the final analysis, a game you'd want to play forever.
And that's about it. If you can start thought structuring by writing, reduce your filler words by pausing, use ethos to draw other people's credibility, and finally, structure a conversation depending on the objective you're trying to achieve, you're automatically going to become better at articulation. But articulation isn't the end of the game. And when it comes to frameworks, I know it can still be a little tricky to understand how to begin, what to say in the middle, and how to conclude. So we've created an entire video which goes very deep into framework modeling. It'll help you not just improve your articulation, but your storytelling skills as well. You can check out that entire video right here. See you in a second.